Albert Einstein didn't actually say that quote about insanity doing the same thing over and over again, but it doesn't make it any less valid.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. If you don't believe it, why would I have a lower third? Where is it? They would call me Sully. I've been a baseball podcaster for a long time, over a decade. This is my sixth full season here as a host of the Locked On Podcast Network. And you can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. You can follow me. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. If you are listening every day, make sure if you're going to post something on the social media site, make sure to post that hashtag Everyday Sully. By the way, if you like what I'm doing here, like it, subscribe it, tell your friends about it. Tell your friends it's a cool, fun, happening podcast about baseball. If you really like what I'm doing, also make sure you subscribe to Locked On A's, because I host that show 5 days a week. That's right. You can get 10 episodes with your pal Sully. So, hey, just so you know, I have been recording a lot of evergreen episodes recently because I have been traveling. I've not been able to sit down and do as many live ones as I can. But starting tomorrow, starting Wednesday, when we do the updated power rankings, we're going to start the trivia question up again. It didn't make any sense for me to do the trivia question if I was just doing these, trying to record some of these ahead of time. So you're going to be seeing a different background behind me because I'm going to be not here in the luxurious Sully Baseball Studios in an undisclosed location. But we're going to be doing some interesting shows both here in Southern California and in Northern California. I want to say a couple of things. I brought this up in an episode of Locked On A's that is being dropped on the exact same day, but I want to make one thing very clear right here and also right now. I do not want the Tampa Bay Rays to move. I don't. I think the Tampa Bay Rays can work. I think the Tampa Bay Rays are a well-run organization, and I think they are whether or not they're having an ideal season right now, Stuart Sternberg is an owner who has done everything in his means, and from my point of view, into making sure the Rays at least field a competitive team year in and year out. And whether they've won anything or not, whether they've won a pennant here or there, they get to the playoffs, I still look at this as a team that is well run, has a solid farm system, has one of the best managers in baseball. Yes, the horrible decision in the 2020 World Series probably cost the Rays a title. But you know what? Every manager, Joe Torre made some terrible decisions. All right, Casey Stengel made some terrible decisions. Every manager has made terrible decisions here or there. That just happened to be a big one. But I am not one of the people who says the Tampa Bay Rays can't work. They can. I'm not one of the people who says the Tampa Bay Rays have no fans. They do. Tampa Bay has a lot of sports fans. And if you take a look at the TV ratings and you take a look at the viewership, they actually have a solid following. And if you take a look at the fact that they have been saddled with a stadium that was built long before this ownership took over. The stadium was built to lure an expansion team or to lure a team to move there. The White Sox, the Mariners, the Rangers, the Giants almost all moved there, almost had an expansion. But it was built in the 1980s before we had the stadium renaissance, before we realized a lot of things that we now know what makes stadiums work. Downtown stadiums and areas where there's a lot of hustle and bustle around it has worked. We take a look at what happened with the Giants and with the Padres and with Baltimore. Those are three great examples of what could work. And this stadium was built before that. But not only does Tampa Bay have a decent, has very good, following in terms of media and everything like that, and TV ratings and everything like that. It's also a solid sports fan environment. The Tampa Bay Lightning, who have had a lot of success and won multiple Stanley Cups, led the National Hockey League in attendance in 2022 and remain a very well-attended team. Tampa Bay is hardly a hotbed for hockey, and yet the Lightning draw very well. Everyone I know who lives in the Tampa Bay area loves the Lightning. A lot of them also love the Rays. And the Lightning play well, and they've won. The Rays have played well, and they've made the playoffs. The Lightning are amongst the best attended teams in the National Hockey League. The Rays are not. And so the idea of, well, what's the difference? Trying to figure out what the difference is. Well, the Amélie Arena, named after the great French movie, is located in downtown Tampa. I'm not saying anything you don't already know. They're located in a great downtown area where there's a lot of hustle and bustle and people going around. And it's a great downtown. And the arena is right there. Stonk. Easy to get to. We have been hearing for years that the problem is Tropicana Field, where it's located. Where it's located in St. Pete. Which is great if you live in Pinellas Park, but not great if you live in Tampa or all the around there. It's a pain in the neck to get to there. And so I believe that if you built the stadium downtown Tampa Bay, the Rays would sell out, or at least would get 20 to 30,000 there a night. So naturally, they want to build next to Tropicana Field. I don't understand when things like this happen, when there are issues. We talk about this all the time in Locked On A's, that moving the team to Las Vegas is not going to solve anything because Las Vegas is not a very good baseball potential market. And building and likewise, the Tropicana Field situation, if you're going to build it right next to it, we're going to be having the same GD conversations in 10, 15 years. Why can't they draw? They built this big new thing. They built a big new thing in Miami. They're not drawing there. Is people suddenly going to be able to teleport to St. Petersburg? The problem was the location. Now, the quote, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, has been attributed to Albert Einstein. And while he is a smart man and well played by Tom Conti in the film Oppenheimer, there's no evidence that connects the two together. Maybe so. Whoever said that must have been smart, must have been an Einstein, and someone wrote it down the wrong way. Doesn't make it any less true. We are not going to solve a thing. You have a region that likes sports. They watch them. Tampa Bay fans are there. Don't listen to the narrative that there's no fans there. There are. There are a lot of Dodger fans. But if you put Dodger Stadium on Catalina Island, their attendance will go down. There are a lot of Boston Red Sox fans. If you put that stadium in the Chestnut Hill Mall instead of downtown, I suspect you'd see a drop in the attendance. I'm yelling because it makes me mad, because I think Tampa Bay has some tremendous fans who are just bursting at the seams to support this team. They've never had a chance because the stadium, to paraphrase Indiana Jones and Sala in that great scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark where they said they're digging in the wrong place. Yeah, right now, when you take a look at the potential developers who want to build this great new city stadium there, and when the minute they break ground, I'm going to take a look at them and say, they're digging in the wrong place. You want to buy some tickets? I know I want to buy tickets. I know good tickets are available at Tropicana Field and at the Oakland Coliseum. But I'm going to be seeing games at Dodger Stadium, games at Oracle Park. I'm going to be seeing games at Angel Stadium, maybe a few other places. Let me tell you, every time I'm going to use Game Time, because Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch with killer last-minute deals. All-in prices, views from the seats, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Now, I have my areas I like to sit in. I like to sit in the second deck behind home plate, but a little bit along the first base line. That's my ideal seat. Well, then I can use the zone deals on Game Time because I say, here's the area I want to sit, and they go through it, and they choose a section, and they find the best deals in the seats there. And those last-minute details, I'm telling you, you can save up to 60% buying last minutes for not just baseball, but any sport, concert, comedy, theater, you name it. And it's all in prices. You can get all your fees right up front, no surprise costs, and you can get the seat views. We can get a panoramic seat view. So you go, oh, love that view. Looking good. Here's what you got to do. You got to download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem the code LOCKONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices. Do you know what they are? I'll tell you what they are. They're guaranteed. Hey, let's hear from our friends over at supplyhouse.com. You get supplies for the site that's made for skilled trades. Supplyhouse.com. Supplyhouse.com is a reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Get expert solution and industry-leading service from the friendliest folk in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free trade master program. Every trade master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at supplyhouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere from just a few clicks away from supplyhouse.com. Hey, where is your hub for the best sports news, sports takes, sports analysis? Make the switch to the Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring the biggest stories in sports. At Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streamed 24/7 on the YouTubes and on the free Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I brought this up on the A's podcast. I'm going to bring it up here, much to my potential peril. I don't want the A's to move. I think Las Vegas is not a good place, and I think that the A's haven't had the right chance. They haven't had the chance. They haven't had the stadium. They haven't had the ownership backing them up. I think it could work. I think the Rays, are a more likely chance to never move because I think the ownership is there committed. I just don't know why they're building there. They got to build somewhere else. But you know what? I don't understand why New Orleans has not been a more, aggressive partner or an aggressive landing spot for a Major League Baseball team. Because I mentioned this on Locked On A's, but I mentioned it here. New Orleans has a lot of things going for it as a potential baseball city. First and foremost, they have the right kind of fans. Now, let me tell you, before anyone gets offended, I know they're great fans everywhere. I just finished saying they're great fans in Tampa Bay. They're great fans in Oakland. They're great fans all over the place. But for a fan base, you need to have people who there is deep-rooted population and deep-rooted pride in that region. That's one of the biggest problems I have with Las Vegas, is that the population explosion is relatively new. And you'll see that when people are transplanted relatively new to an area, they stay loyal to whatever team that they grew up watching. If you grew up in Chicago and you move here, you're going to stick with the White Sox or the Cubs. If you're from Boston, New Orleans, from New York, Baltimore, Philadelphia, and you move somewhere else in the world, chances are you stay with the team that you grew up with because of that pride. Well, there is that deep-rooted pride you have in New Orleans. It is a specific region of the South. Louisiana feels a lot. I've been all over the South. Louisiana feels a lot different from Alabama, feels a lot different from the Carolinas, and it feels a lot different from Atlanta. Now, I know Atlanta is the team of the South, and has a lot of deep-rooted fandom, especially because of the Superstation in the 1980s, but there's a lot of pride. If you are from Louisiana, meet someone from Louisiana after they moved out of that region, see when they stop talking about it. And we see that passion when you hear them talk about the Saints. The Saints are their team. They hold on to the Saints the same way a Red Sox fan hold on to the Red Sox or a Met fan hold on to the Mets, etc. There is that pride. There is a decent-sized population. There's a big reach to be the team of that area. That Gulf Coast area of the South is a lot different from the Eastern Seaboard South. It makes sense that the Braves would be the team of Georgia and the South Carolina and Alabama, but to be reaching out to Mississippi and to Louisiana, that's quite a long reach. And it's just a totally different feel, a different vibe. So you have that kind of fans that are there. You have a decent-sized city that shows they can support a basketball team and they can support an NFL team. This is all true. Do you know what they also have? And this is a huge advantage over Las Vegas. This is a huge advantage over Sacramento. Hell, this is a huge advantage over Nashville and over Charlotte and over Portland and all the other cities that people bandy around as a potential MLB landing spot. They have a place to play. Now, I know the New Orleans Superdome is not an ideal baseball place. I'm not that stupid, okay? I may not be Einstein, but I'm not that stupid. I get it. But it is a temporary place. If you can get some backer, some money, avoid the public money, but you get some billionaire wants to be the king of New Orleans, a place which, by the way, there's a lot of Southerners in baseball. There's a lot of players from that region who would probably want to go there. It's already a hotbed with Louisiana State University baseball. And New Orleans is a fun place to be. I've described it as a frat house with a transit system, but it's a fabulous city. All that coming together, and temporarily they could play in the Superdome while a new stadium is being built. This is one of the gigantic problems of what's happening with the freaking A's in Las Vegas. If there was the equivalent of the Superdome in Las Vegas, they'd be in Las Vegas before you could watch Ricky Henderson steal a base. There wouldn't be this whole, well, we'll play in Sacramento. No, we'll play here for the time being until a park is built. And it's sitting there. So many things in terms of the regional fan base, so many things which it's already a major city, and there's a place to play, at least temporarily. I don't want the Rays to move. I can't make that any clearer. But let's say they did move, or they have to, or the St. Petersburg city doesn't work out, and downtown Tampa never is going to help them out, and Ybor City and all that doesn't work out. Then I think they'd probably move to Orlando, but that's a whole different bag of tomatoes. If they have to move, why isn't Louisiana and the Superdome being at least say, hey, they could play here at least for a couple of years? It wouldn't be ideal, but neither was playing at RFK Stadium for the Nationals when they moved from Montreal. The one thing that held that up, everyone knew they were going to go to Washington. They were like, oh, maybe we'll move to Raleigh. No, there was nowhere to play. Washington was the one place that made sense. There was RFK Stadium. RFK Stadium was a dump, but at least it was a dump that could be a placeholder. The Louisiana Superdome, not a permanent solution, but it's a placeholder. Same way the Mile High Stadium was a placeholder for the Rockies until they built Coors Field. Imagine the architecture of an indoor stadium you could have in Louisiana. Could be potentially fabulous. Somewhere in the French Quarter or something like that. People hustling, bustling, going in there. Why? Someone tell me why. There's obviously something I'm missing. There's obviously something that I am not considering right now, because this doesn't make sense to me why it's not brought up. So leave that in the comments and just let me know. Prize Picks. Do you know what it is? It is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It's the most fun and exciting way to get on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. Just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. With Prize Picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000 with a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make Prize Picks the lineup in as little as 60 seconds. You just need to pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 stat projections, and you're locked in. And you can now win 100 times your money with baseball-only lineups on Prize Picks. If you submit a winning lineup featuring 4 demon squares, you'll cash in big time on the biggest moments of the baseball season. And Prize Picks offers injury insurance, so your lineups will continue to stay even if one of your players gets hurt. For example, in baseball games, if a player who registers 2 plate appearances or less, Prize Picks will have your back and not count that as a loss. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Download the app. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. Do you know what it is? It's that simple. Hey, this is a reminder that Locked On has created the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on the Amazon Fire in the free Fire TV channel app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local extras of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channel app. Hey, I was in Cooperstown, and I saw a couple of plaques when I loved going to the plaques. It was a spiritual thing for me. And I've been also reading a lot about the 1914 season and the Federal League and how a third major league has tried to sort of butt into the Major League Baseball situation. And there was a couple interesting things I was reading on that. And I saw 2 plaques when I was at Cooperstown that made me realize how fragile our sense of reality can be. Just one thing here or one thing there could change a lot of our history, or baseball history. I saw 2 plaques in the Hall of Fame, Ray Schalk and Red Faber. Now, Ray was the catcher for the 1919 Chicago White Sox, the famous Black Sox who threw the World Series in 1919. Gamblers paid them off. The gamblers knew not to approach Ray Schalk because he was a tough, mean son of a bitch, and he would never go along with it. They knew that he would probably be punched out, and he never went along. The gamblers didn't even bother to call. He said, "Yeah, he's not going to go. He's not going to go with us." And he didn't take the money. Wasn't one of the ones who were suspended, and he's in the Hall of Fame now. So being a mean SOB and intimidating a bunch of gamblers to know that don't even go there was the difference between him being in the Hall of Fame or not. But another plaque I saw was for Red Faber, and Red Faber was a star pitcher on the Chicago White Sox, and he was a dynamic pitcher, and he wound up being one of the key members of the team that won the 1917 World Series for the Chicago White Sox. Now, he served in the military for a big chunk of the 1918 season, and when he came back, he was still really good. But this is something that just like I think COVID is probably going to fade out in our collective memories for whatever reason. The Spanish flu pandemic, which was eerily similar to the COVID pandemic, raged through America during the 1918, 1919 years. And Ray Faber caught a flu that could have been part of the pandemic. And because of that, he was not allowed to participate in the 1919 World Series. And he was one of the star pitchers. And one of the keys for the gamblers was to get these star pitchers on board. because it's easier to control the game if you're a starting pitcher. Back then, especially when the pitchers were throwing 9. So when they got Eddie Cicotti and they got Lefty Williams, they knew that they could control. Yet back then it was best 5 out of 9. You can get those two could control the series and easily get 5 losses. Well, if Red Faber was healthy, he also would have no doubt have been approached by the gamblers. Now, I don't know enough about Red Faber to know if he would have said no or not. But I know there was a lot of animosity that all the players had towards Comiskey and towards baseball, who looked at the big payday and said, this could change my life. Long term, we all saw how it changed their lives. But if he was healthy, he may have been targeted and he may have taken the money and he may have been the ones who suspended. Instead, he was sick, unable to play in the World Series. So why are we going to bribe someone who's not even going to play? And while all of his teammates who took the money got suspended, Red Faber played on, and guess what? His plaque is in the Hall of Fame. Being a mean SOB helped Skulk. Being sick helped Red Faber. But there's one more, and the reason why I brought up the Federal League. When the Federal League was a third major league that attempted to be made in 1914, they played 2 seasons, 1914, 1915, and it had 2 long-term effects. When it failed, they sued Major League Baseball, at the time it was called organized baseball, saying they were a monopoly, not allowing competition. And the ruling came that yes, they're a monopoly, but they are not a traditional business, and baseball got an antitrust exemption, which they still have to this day, and they cling to like a koala hugging a tree, that they have an antitrust exemption that doesn't exist for other sports, but because this ruling came in their favor over 100 years ago, they're clinging to it. And anytime anything bad happens to baseball, that someone threatens that antitrust exemption, baseball always folds because they need that. They're able to work as a monopoly with no oversight. And that was done by the Federal League. The other thing the Federal League gave us was the team that was built for Chicago wanted to put a big stamp in the city, and they created Wegman Park, which was the park for the Chicago Federal team, which were nicknamed the Whales. And they wanted to show off what a great stadium that they had. And in the end, they did build a fabulous stadium, but the league folded. And when the league folded, that stadium was empty, and the Cubs said, we'll take it. And Wegman Park, built for the Federal League and named after the man who spearheaded the Federal League in Chicago, Bill Wegman, was renamed Wrigley Field. But one of the cities where the Federal League was successful was Baltimore, because Baltimore had a National League team that folded, had an American League team, but they moved to New York and eventually became the Yankees. And so Baltimore was thrilled that a third major league wound up in their city. And the Baltimore Terrapins were a major league team, albeit in the Federal League. The minor league team that was there, the Orioles, saw their attendance get absolutely clobbered because there was a major league team there. And so who the hell wanted to see a minor league team there? And so the owner of the minor league Baltimore Orioles, Jack Dunn, saw that he was in big trouble financially because he couldn't fill the place. And a lot of times what minor league teams did back then is they would sell their best players to major league teams as a way to pay their bills. Now, one of the only draws that he had on the 1914 Orioles was a young left-handed pitcher who was a native of Baltimore and was a fan favorite. John McGraw, the great manager of the Giants, wanted to sign this kid and said, hey, I'll buy his contract from you. And because he was the lone draw, the owner, Dunn, said, no, I have a couple more starts with him as a pitcher. I really need that box office. So John McGraw had to back off. And the White Sox and Comiskey said, hey, we'll take him off your hand. We could use another pitcher. And he considered selling this player and several other players from the minor league Baltimore Orioles to the Chicago White Sox. Eventually, he sold the player to the Boston Red Sox. infuriating John McGraw because he said, I was going to offer you a better deal. Why didn't you call me first? He said, no, sorry. We just sold Babe Ruth to the Red Sox. So while there's an amazing what if Babe Ruth went to the Giants and played with John McGraw, the other what if they did work out that deal with Charlie Comiskey? Then you would have had a left-handed pitcher. Now, Babe Ruth became the great power-hitting, great hitter, but when he first came up in the 1910s, he was better known as a great starting pitcher, and that would have been his role if he was on the 1919 White Sox, and gamblers would have approached him. And one thing we knew about Babe Ruth, he was a great star. He saved the game of baseball, but he also had a few vices, like drinking, like whores, and all other stuff, and probably would not have been, at that point in his life, able to say no to a giant pile of cash placed to him by gamblers. So if that had happened, I have no doubt Babe Ruth would have taken the money. And Babe Ruth would have been named as one of those players who were banned from baseball. And remember, Babe Ruth is credited of saving baseball from the scandal of the 1919 White Sox. If he was on the 1919 White Sox, who would have saved it then? That is a wonderful what if. Well, starting tomorrow, the trivia is going to start again. And follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I'm your pal Sully at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Begging the Rays to move downtown, considering New Orleans and wondering what could have been if Babe Ruth was part of the wrong team. This has been Locked On MLB. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.